suppose that did. Now let's continue the program. Come on, you do.
Yeah,
You start showing me your wingman style.
I will. So tonight we have a very interesting program, and not only will we be hearing from three special guests who have interesting and distinct contributions to provide to public discourse from, the world of politics, the world of journalism, and the world of sports, but we'll also be enjoying a musical performance. So, please stay tuned.
All right. Let's introduce then our first guest, Fatih. Our first guest is Maria Vamvakinou. She's a federal member for Calwell, which is in the heart of multicultural Melbourne. And it has, I dare say, you're very aware of this, the largest Muslim community. And it has the largest intake of refugees in the state of Victoria. So she understands very well the plight of all those who are new to Australia. And we should also add, she's the first Greek-born woman to be elected to the Parliament of this country. In fact, Maria is the Deputy Chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Migration. She's also a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, which includes the Human Rights Subcommittee. Also, I dare say, because it brings back some memories for me, co-convener of the Parliamentary Friends of SBS. Mind you, I don't think she was an SBS viewer in the early days. Maybe she might tell me. She understands multiculturalism, which of course allows this particular program to host the largest interfaith dialogue at Parliament House every year. And it goes on and on and on. We need to bring her on board. Welcome to Ramadan Conversations, Maria Vamvakinou.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. It's great to be here, George and Fatih. I'm really pleased that I'm going to be able to share this very special occasion with you both and everyone else watching.
Well, I think we got everything right. You're a huge SBS fan. You understand very well the journey of the migrant, and you're a migrant from the very first. Was it 4 years old? What? And you're a migrant from 4 years old.
I'm the post-Second World War mob that came along. I'm the New Australians. I am the New Australian. 58 years later, I hope I'm pretty much an older Australian now, but yes, I'm part of the New Australians. And George,
Fatih, have you got a question for this New Australian? Go on.
I do actually. I might get it going. So Maria, George mentioned in his introduction that the seat of Calwell is very diverse, and we have a very diverse faith base there as well. Right. And as a member for Calwell, can you provide some insights into how those faith communities dealt with the COVID restrictions, and particularly, keeping in mind that we've had some significant days of significance in the faith traditions, Easter, Ramadan, Vesak. So if there's anything that you can provide about that.
How have they coped? Yeah.
Three of the within that period of social and
I'm just wondering if we have some audio problems there, and if we should start that question again.
People are very, very
Maria, can you hear me?
Practicing of their faith. Yes, I can hear you.
I'm just sorry. I was just wondering if we had a breakdown in the audio there, and whether you should start that answer once again, if you don't mind.
Are we on?
Yes, we are. We're definitely on. I can now. Yes, thank you.
Religious events that have taken place in the last 4 weeks within the the social distancing period have been obviously Easter, Ramadan, and yesterday was Vesak Day. I have the largest Muslim constituency in Victoria. I've got a very big a Christian community, Eastern Orthodox, Baptist community. So these events are very important to my community, And starting with Easter, and even my own participation, Easter has been interesting for Christians because that too had to go on an online platform. And whereas you'd be familiar with the Holy Week and its importance, church attendance is very important during Holy Week. And in fact, it's the most popular church attendances for the year, actually. This time, of course, people couldn't go to church. And a lot of the churches began to live stream services. I actually got the opportunity to watch churches in Sydney, which I would usually Northcote, but on the Front Eminence, the Archbishop in Sydney deliver the Mass. So that was a first. I enjoyed that, and I thought about how this is an interesting thing because this could solve some of the problems that people have who are not able to actually attend church. I don't know how the older generation, I'm sure they couldn't computers, but children.
Maria, you mentioned you arrived in Australia as a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Can you hear me? You arrived in Australia as a 4-year-old, and the country that you arrived in is a very different country to the one we have today, right?
It is.
What I'm asking you to do as a federal parliamentarian is can you throw your mind forward and give us a sense of what this Australia of ours is likely to look like in 20, 30, 40 years' time? How post COVID-19, I'm thinking now, do we have to reimagine a vision for Australia? And what should it look like? What should we put in it to make it better?
I think irrespective, we can't allow COVID-19 to totally define everything we do into the future. I think irrespective of that, our current migration patterns themselves are telling us that in 30 years' time, our country is going to be a very different place. And in many ways, for us here in 2021, we're probably like the Aussies in 1955 and maybe 1954, 1948, that suddenly saw all these people coming to this country, and they might have felt a bit like, well, most of them, the southern, didn't look like those at that time. Obviously, Australia is a different place to understand our identity in a much, we've got a greater understanding of what we look like and who we are. Some of us still can't accept that, but, we have to live with that. But most of us broadly understand that modern Australia is a multicultural country, and that also applies to the way Australians look. Now, I'm imagining in the next 30 years, with the number of people that are coming to Australia and becoming Australian from our Southeast Asian subcontinent neighbourhood, the face of this country is going to change again. And the whole question of Australian identity and what it means to be an Australian 30 years from now is still a story and a journey that is live and we're still participating in. And I think we need to be very mindful of that because our national identity is organic. It continues to grow and it's shaped by our immigration circumstances. And not to mention, I hope that in 30 years, by the time we get to 2050, we have and reconciled our Indigenous inherent important. That's an issue in relation to what is Australian, the Australian identity. Needless to say, it's going to be about population as well. How many people there's, when we came to Australia, Arthur Calwell stared down that insular Australia, 7 million of them, and said to them, listen here, we can't hold this continent with 7 million people. We need people. And irrespective of what you think, we're getting them, and here they are. What is our population target going to be? And what sort of livelihood and employment is going to aim that population? So there's big debate and conversation without the political divisiveness and wedging. We can't have these discussions if we're going to get caught up in us and them and who is and who isn't. These need to be
point
carefully
scoring.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no place for that because immigration and population are the future of this country. They were when Calwell and that government started to bring the migrants in. Were, I guess, prior to that, the white government, and they'll continue. This is who we are.
Yeah, look, Harold Holt had a big hand in changing the way that the Australians of that day looked at Greeks for a start. The Greeks pre-Calwell, or not pre-Harold Holt, rather, were persona non grata, and he changed the way that the public service at the time, or the public servants, viewed the Greeks, and he had a big hand in introducing assisted passage for the Greeks, who had been allies of Australia during World War II. And yet, after the war, they were put on the back burner when it came to wanting to arrive down under. So it was interesting times. We've seen great changes, but I commend you for saying that we need to put the point scoring aside, but think long and hard about what's to come, and then be 100% committed as a nation to go forward.
Well, George, you'll remember you asked before whether I was watching SBS. Well, I did. I did it from the days of 028. Now, you were the man of colour. And I mean, my dad was a man of colour. We were olive-skinned. So, in terms of shades, we've been for a very long time. It just goes to show how each generation with issues that the previous generation dealt with. And I just hope that as we're doing that, we do it with a greater wisdom and a greater knowledge about who we all are and what we should be. And I think that that's what's really important. And I just think it's absolutely critical that these sorts of discussions, are done in a way that are not divisive, because politics can be a great thing. It could also be the great underminer of great debates, and I'm a politician that says that, but I think that it's the kind of people say, well, that's your trade. Well, it might be, but I've learned a lot, and I've learned that, and we've seen this in the COVID-19 response from the national cabinet, putting aside the politics and working in the national interests, has shown. I hope it's given Australians a bit more confidence, in their institutions and in their politicians. I really do hope that, because you'd be aware, George, as a media person, how the media often can be just as destructive in these debates. Correct. They can be just as divisive,
100%,
as politicians and opinion, writers and whatever. So, but I'm excited for Australia. I really am. I think we have the capacity to be in a good place in 30 years' time as a society. Our whole interfaith networks, the way in which we've managed multiculturalism is unique. It really is unique, and in all the world, and we're different to Canada as well. I don't care what anybody says. And the thing is, with the iftar dinners, I think the first one was in Parliament House. I must have attended the second one, which was in Sydney Road somewhere. Fatih, I don't know if you can remember where it was in Sydney Road, but I do. And those iftar dinners were critical, because you'll all remember that was the beginning of the post-September 11
That's right.
Period. And they were critical. Now we can sit around and have a discussion and enjoy the food. But in those days, the whole purpose of them was to actually respond to what was happening to our Muslim community as a result of what happened in New York. And the post-September 11 period, of which I have been in Parliament, has been a real challenge for this country. And it's been a challenge for our multiculturalism. But, and I can't stress how important iftar dinners and sharing and understanding of Islam has been to this country. And we've learnt a lot, and this is what will help us move forward in the next challenges, in understanding differences and accommodating and embracing diversity.
And the learning
well said, Maria. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.